Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and start screencasting on activity 1.3.3, constraining a sketch. It is it's going to take us probably 3 class periods to do. It's one of those things I want to stress. At first, it's going to be a little overwhelming and you're not going to particularly like it. But as we go, you'll find that it really saves you a lot of time. I'm not going to read to you. I believe that you can do that, but design does require constraint. Constraint's going to make you a more effective and efficient designer. We are going to get into sketch constraints now today. I'm going to start with procedure number 1, which is investigating geometric constraints that are available in our CAD program in the sketch environment. This directs me to open Fusion 360 and begin a sketch. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put on this plane here, I'm going to put 3 objects. I'm going to put a line. I'm going to put, oops, I'm going to put an irregular polygon just by left clicking around. And I am going to put a circle. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and start playing with the constraints, which is what I'm really directed to do. I'm going to look at this horizontal and vertical one. I'm going to come over here. If I look at, there are some constraints on here. For instance, that one right there has to be horizontal. This is going to be perpendicular to this one. And those were constraints that were actually added by the computer, almost as it suggests. I could, right now, let me stress, I'm going to hit cancel. If I grab a corner here, notice that no matter what I do, I'm unable to make this not perpendicular to that. If I were to right click on that, I can delete this constraint. And if I hit OK, now when I pull this corner, I'm able to do that. It no longer has the constraint that it must be perpendicular to this line. That's a pretty big deal. If I look right now up here, this one and this one are always parallel, so I cannot change that. But if I were to right click on that and delete that constraint, select that, hit OK, now all of a sudden I can manipulate that. There's only a couple constraints left at this point. This one is being told to be horizontal. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make a constraint. So I'm going to click horizontal vertical. I'm going to come over and I'm going to click that line. Notice what it did. It made it perfectly vertical. Basically, that just snaps it to the orthographic graph paper that seems to underlie our sketch environment. I'm going to go to coincident. Coincident would mean that 2 things intersect. So what that did was that, I'll cancel it, that locked the end of this line to that point. I'm going to go undo, undo. So coincident means touching, if you would. Tangent, well, let's make this circle and this line tangent and see what that does. I don't think that was, okay. I made it tangent to this part. So it is always the extension of this line runs through here. So it's always going to just touch that line or that extended line. But that's going to put a circle and make it touch and even the extension of that line, which I found a little confusing there for a second. Equal. What if I made this one? Oops. Let me cancel here. All right, now I'm going to go equal. And I come over here, I click this one and this one. Now those will always be equal in length. You get the idea of what we're doing, but you want to basically go through there and play with the constraints, see what the different ones do. Things like concentric circles, if I were to real quickly add another circle, I can make concentric this circle, and this circle. And you can see what do they have? They have the common center. If you think of with in Spanish, or congenital is with the genes if you have a condition. But that's going to be what procedure number one wants to do. It wants you to just play around with constraints in the sketch environment. Okay, in the second procedural part, it wants you to answer some questions. If you go to the deliverable that guides you, you can see those are all bolded, meaning I'm going to grade them. The difference between parallel and collinear, I'm going to use the Google machine, parallel versus collinear, and my answer, which I would argue is very good, my answer would be this first pop-up. I'm going to come over here and, whoops, I'm going to copy that image, and I literally would, for the answer there, I would paste that. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but when I look at that, I know the difference between parallel and collinear. I think that's very effective, and let's be honest, the whole point of this is for you to know what these things mean and to do some learning. So I'm fine with that for an answer. I think that would be a great job. Next, I'm directed to part 3 is do it. I apologize. All right, I'm gonna create a sketch of a concave polygon. There's a concavity there. It looks kind of like a bowl, using only the line tool. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll go new design and sketch, and I'm going to choose a different plane just for the fun of it. Left click on that, and then I'm going to kind of just go up and around, and there'll naturally be some constraints pop up. You can see that this is going to be perpendicular to this. If I look at the constraints that have been added, this line and this line are perpendicular. That's just a suggestion, but it's locked in. I can right click on it and take it off. This line here is horizontal. I didn't necessarily mean to draw it horizontal, but it was given that constraint. So the computer automatically constrains things. And then certainly this line over here is parallel with this line. Okay, step 3 is, or procedure 3 is then asking me to remove any constraints that I have on here. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on that and hit delete. That got it. Right click on that and hit delete. And then right click on that and hit delete. All right, so that's pretty straightforward here. Now it's going to ask me to drag the middle of a line versus the end of a line, or the coincident point of a line, and identify the difference. So there are then these questions getting in here, but I'm going to drag a middle of a line and see what happens. I would describe this when I grab the middle of a line. The line's direction certainly doesn't change. Its length doesn't change, but rather it just kind of seems to slide up and down or in and out, if that's how you view it. In number 5, if I go and grab a coincident point, now all of a sudden the directions and the distances of the lines change. But by doing this, hopefully you're seeing that I really can, if I want to change a drawing a little bit, it really matters whether I grab the middle of a line or a coincident point, meaning the end of the line where it's tied to another line. And I would go ahead and be sure to answer those as I go. Steps 6 through 8, I'm going to omit on the activity and pick up at number 9. All right, so it's going to have me start a new design. It's going to have me create that sketch, use millimeters for that, and then I'm essentially going to draw just this and remove all constraints. So I'm going to go new design. I'm going to come up here to document settings, and I'm going to change this to millimeters. That way it's just going to change this one. If I wanted to come up here and change up here, I believe under my name, I could make it so it's always going to default to millimeters, but I don't want that. I'm then going to create a sketch. I'm going to take a quick peek at this again. Okay, I'm going to draw that. Not too worried about actual dimensions. All right, so whew, that's not exact, but that's okay. I'm going to learn to clean it up, I believe. Okay, now I am to review the constraints that were automatically applied to the sketch. Create a quick hand sketch. I'm actually intended to omit 12, so omit that. But I'm going to review it. I'm going to investigate how that affects the lines, and then I'm going to remove a few and kind of see how that affects the lines. So if I look here, I have lots of automatically added by Fusion. That is to say, this line and this line are parallel. This line and this line are perpendicular. This is perpendicular to this line, which is perpendicular to this line. So right now, if I were to grab that, there's no way I can make this anything but if I were to remove it, if I removed, say that one, you'll see that now all of a sudden I can make it something other than perpendicular to that. Right now, if I grab this, I cannot make it anything other than horizontal, not because there's a horizontal constraint on it, but because of this being parallel to that. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that, and now you'll see I can do some things. So the automatically added constraints are very helpful. It's intuitive by Fusion 360, but certainly there can be some problems with that. So sometimes I have to be able to go into Fusion 360 constraints and get rid of them. All right, I believe I've done that. 13, 14. Now I'm looking at discarding that sketch and recreating it. And this is a relatively lengthy recreation where I'm going to control the constraints to make it really lovely. I'm going to do something like this and then constrain it into submission, if you would. So I'm going to pick up in the next video.